Hello, and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. My name is Aurora, and for the next hour, your DNA is going to be rearranged and uplifted, and we're going to begin with these musical tones tuned to 432 hertz to begin with, beginning with C. So this is my new musical instrument that I'm playing right here. It is, if you can envision, a type of xylophone that has 8 steel tubes on the top of it, and the tubes are tuned to specific frequencies, and the A note, I'll just re-emphasize that A note over here, is tuned to 432 hertz as opposed to 440 hertz, which is what this A note of my regular electronic piano is tuned to. And the idea is that 432 hertz is in harmonic agreement or complementary harmonic proportions with the natural resonance of Earth herself. And by listening to music that is tuned to these frequencies, we actually bring our non-physical energy centers or chakras into greater harmonic alignment, not only with the planet, but with the cosmos itself. I have said often that you are like a musician and your body is like an instrument, and you are submerged within a sea of vibration or within a symphony of vibration, and that symphony is the cosmos. There is a great composer, and the great composer has created the pattern of energy as it flows and the amount of possibilities and probabilities that exist. All of these are expressed as visual diagrams in my artwork. If you are new to this broadcast, I'm Aurora, I'm a walk-in. I'm not the original inhabitant of this physical body, and I say this so that you understand where my information comes from. It comes from direct insight, from my own observation, from my own higher faculties. It is not gleaned from or refined from looking at the books and writings and teachings of other people that are on Earth. So that is what I have to share. I have my own unique journey and my own unique perspective to share. However, the diagrams that I present and the information that I present is not my own personal fantasy or my own personal imagination. The information that I present is a cohesive language that exists at large in the cosmos, and I am a perceiver of that language and a user of the language, but I would not pretend to be the writer or creator of the language. I am, however, the writer or creator of a specific poem or paragraph or passage within that language. So the language is the interdimensional language of vibration. It's color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. Tone being, like a musical tone. And we are beings with a biological body, so we have 5 senses. So when we perceive vibration, we perceive them through our 5 senses. Primarily, we are visually oriented, so we primarily perceive it as visuals, and the chakras are related to colors and colors of the rainbow. However, these patterns are also related to the scale or the musical notes, especially of the Western scale, beginning with C. So those relate to the colors of the rainbow. All of this has to do with the harmonic nested proportions of you within the larger context of the cosmos. When you make the pattern of your individual body and your individual energy centers conform with and match in a complementary fashion with the pattern of energy that is flowing on a larger context, the cosmos itself, the patterns of consciousness as it's flowing, then you achieve what is known as life. Life happens when you conform to the harmonic pattern of energy as it flows in the cosmos at large. And death is what we experience when we are not in alignment, when we are askew or when we are going tangential to the pathway we're supposed to be going. And what happens is we actually hit this flowing membrane of energy. And it's a flowing membrane that is comprised of all of the last moments of every single one of your timelines. I draw this. I draw pictures of it. It is what's in my artwork. Right now I'm describing it with my voice, or I like to say I paint a picture with my voice, but most of the time I make artwork and sculptures about this. So pictures worth 1,000 words. You can see some examples of my artwork by going to the Birth of a New Dimension UCY homepage, and you can check out the Twitter feed at Birth Dimension. It's listed on that page. Click on any of the links that I have presented there, or you can go to Twitter itself at Birth Dimension, or you can very easily simply go to flyingrainbowlasagne.com, and I have several videos of my artwork in process and many still shots of my artwork so that you can see what I'm talking about. Since I came here, I've been here since 2001. I've been making artwork for about the past 14 years. Since I've been here making artwork, I have been drawing these patterns of energy as it flows in the cosmos. And the patterns are toroidal, or shaped like a donut, and the membrane that comprises the donut. So where the powdered sugar goes on the donut, that is the membrane of death. And the powdered sugar, quote unquote, is the final denouement, the last moment of the movie of your life, of every single possible timeline of your life. So your life has many different possibilities within it. In some of your possibilities, the most peripheral ones, you died like a second after you were born, or were hardly even able to be born. It takes a lot of effort just to be born. If I may tell you this, if you're an owner-operator of a physical body and you're listening to this, you're a really lucky person. Many things in this world will tell you that it's not good to have a physical body, that you're just a lowly, stupid, earthbound human, and you burp and fart, and that you have greasy skin, and that, you have all these vulnerabilities related to having a physical form. And all of those things are false programs that prevent you from actually recognizing that having a physical body is an incredible privilege. When you're in the physical, you have access to certain birthrights, these access to the creative life force. Creative life force energy is what keeps the cells of your physical body alive. Creative life force energy is what allows physical procreation to happen, like having actual physical babies, but it's also what allows cellular reproduction to happen. Otherwise, if you didn't have access to the creative life force energy and you cut your finger would stay permanently cut. You couldn't create new little tiny cells to replace the old cells that died. Or imagine, you'd eventually slough off all of your old skin cells and never produce new skin cells, and you would not have any skin. You would die. So the idea is that being connected through your crown chakra to the endless flow of life energy is what helps to keep your cellular body alive. When you go askew, when you bring yourself out of alignment with this flow of energy that comes from the source, I've described the source as the 0th dimension. It is infinity. So infinity is the 0th dimension because everything is there. It takes 0 amount of information to describe the position of something in this place. Everything is there. So we are there right now. This profound concept means that you have a singularity inside of you. You have a singularity inside of each chakra or energy center of your body. You have a singularity inside of every cell of your physical multicellular body. So that's the nucleus of every one of your cells connects to the source, and it connects via your DNA. DNA is the bridge of light between energy that comes from the source and the manifested reality of your physical cellular body. P.S. Let me pause for a moment in order to say that I present all of this information and more in a very effective, comprehensive format with pictures in my class called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And I invite and encourage all of you to participate in this class. And it is possible because there are free videos on the link provided, and if you would like, you can enroll and access all the videos. And anyone can log in and be a part of the free webinars. I walk a fine line because I am here in the physical world and participating in the social contract of the economy. And so that means I like to get paid for my work. I like to get energy exchange. What I send out, I would like to have energy come back to me. And I also just really want to perform my task here on Earth, which is sharing this information. Sharing this information about the structure of the cosmos, the structure of your own non-physical energy body, and how you can add another dimension and become a flying rainbow lasagna. That is pretty much my mission here. It is why I'm here in the physical. It's why I took on this body after the previous occupant died. I'm not just here as a vacation. I'm not just here for observation, to look around and see what things are like. Even though it's wonderful to do that, I'm here on a very specific, purposeful mission to share this information. And the reason why I literally bent time, space, and consciousness in order to come here and do this is because this is the tool to raise your consciousness again to the levels that it once was before what is known as the fall. Before the fall of consciousness, before what Christians call the fall from grace, before the divergence of the genetic code that has led to humans being out of touch with the source, or let's say minimally connected to the source, because you still have to have some connection to life force energy in order to be alive. So if we were to speak in terms of percentages, let's say that right now you are connected to the source 3% of the total potential connection. And that 3% keeps your physical body alive, keeps your heart rate and your blood pumping, keeps the neurological activity of your body functioning, keeps your cells cellularly replicating and metabolizing, and makes it possible to physically procreate and make more humans. There's a 97% potential upgrade in the level of consciousness and awareness that you can experience if you change your trajectory of consciousness and get into closer alignment with the broadcast or emanations of the source. And those broadcasts or emanations, they're energy that flows in a certain pattern. It's like saying it's music that is according to a certain pattern. So the difference between music and noise is that some of these sounds are existing according to a pattern that we call music, and when it's just random, we call it noise. You're submerged within a symphony of consciousness. When you are conforming to that pattern of consciousness, then you are playing along with the symphony and along with the great composer. And when you are not conforming to those levels of patterns of consciousness, you are literally dying. You're literally heading towards the membrane of death, that powdery sugar-coated membrane on the outside of your donut that does not lead to the singularity. And the singularity, if we are using a powdered donut as an example, an analogous example here, the singularity would be the donut hole. It would be like a donut that does not have a very large hole in the center of it, or imagine a point in space in the empty space inside of where a physical donut is. I know that was a very hard sentence to say, but the singularity exists in the non-space of the donut, the hole of the donut. And it's the place where the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, and I add in consciousness that science does not necessarily recognize, where the fabric of reality is stretched to its infinite maximum amount of stretchiness. When we do that, it's like putting an infinitely heavy bowling ball on an infinitely stretchy surface. We stretch it and make it go to a point that just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And when we do that, the rules that we use to describe and measure physical reality totally break down. What we end up with is an overlapping of everything, an overlapping of all matter, all energy, all possibilities, all probabilities, and all consciousness, all overlapping in the same spot. That's the singularity. And this is also what science describes as the state of the world before it spontaneously decided to expand and create what is known as the Big Bang. So this incredibly concentrated area of overlapping consciousness is the source, and it is the 0th dimension, and it is where you're coming from, and it is also your destination, or where you are traveling to. And all of the experiences that are had in the physical realm, or the realm of coalesced light, this is matter that is coalesced out of light. All of these experiences are like the biofeedback loop that connects the journey from the source and the journey back to the source. So if we were in my studio right now, I'd whip out my pen and paper, I'd draw a little picture of a dot, and then a loop coming out of the dot, and then circling back to the same dot, like kind of shaped almost like a flower petal. And the journey of your consciousness is that loop, coming away from the source, coalescing into physical matter, having all of these wonderful experiences of the physical body, and then returning to the source. So there is a continuum, a continuity of consciousness. The human genetic code was changed, and we could say it was monkeyed with. It was diverted about 10 or 20,000 years ago. It was done intentionally. It was done in order to reduce your connection to the source. It was done in order to reduce human consciousness and make it so that instead of coming here in the physical realm, maintaining your connection to source, being able to see through time, being able to sense where the membrane of death is and which direction you should go in, instead of all of that, it's coming down here, getting a hacked operating system installed, getting language installed that blocks out your communication with the source, and then not knowing what the heck you're doing, and walking around bumping into things, and through trial and error, nosing your way through life, not being able to see down your timeline, not being able to see or perceive the future and make correct adjustments to your trajectory of consciousness, and going through the iterations over and over and over. Like, if I do this, what happens? If I do this, what happens? And returning to hitting the membrane of death and returning to birth, hitting the membrane of death and returning to birth. This happens endlessly within one life. I am describing the trajectory of your consciousness within one lifetime. This is not even reincarnation across many incarnations, where we do experience a refinement of consciousness as we move from lifetime to lifetime. But even that is a very limited and linear viewpoint of what's happening, because what's actually happening is all of our lifetimes are being lived at once. We are experiencing life as a Neanderthal and life, in the 1100s and, known as the Dark Ages, and life here in the 21st century, and life 3,000 years in the future. We are experiencing all of those lives concurrently. So this is the beginning of birth of a new dimension. This is like preparing the garden for new seeds to be planted. We got to prepare the garden of humanity to understand, where is your consciousness coming from? Where is your consciousness going to? And Aurora, what the heck does this have to do with extraterrestrials or otherworldly life? And my friends, it has a lot to do with extraterrestrials and otherworldly life. Because when you're talking to someone that you think is from another planet or another star system, what you're actually talking to is another piece of yourself that is coming from a very different direction and is moving at a vastly different speed. The information that I present here and in my artwork and in my teaching and in my workshops is all about getting people to understand this basic concept. If flying saucers came out of the sky and clank metal spaceships and little green men came out of them, and you would say, oh look, I am meeting someone else. I am meeting another organism. Like if you were to walk in the woods and, meet a bear, you're like, look, I'm a human, you're a bear, we are different organisms. Ah ha ha ha. I laugh at that. That is not what you would be experiencing. If you experienced a being coming out of the sky and, coming out of a ship and coming up to you like a physical being like that, you would be experiencing an aspect of your own self and of your own consciousness that left the source, coalesced into physical matter, had all sorts of physical experiences, and is now interacting with you in the physicality. So you would actually be experiencing meeting yourself from the future. And this also goes deep into personality characteristics and who you really are, and kissing yourself in the mirror. Because when you meet extraterrestrials and extra dimensionals, you are meeting nothing more than the reflection of what is within. Everything that is within you is being reflected by this seeming other presence. So when a person has a psychedelic experience or a boundary dissolving experience, they get to see what is on the inside. And the inside, the totality of you, it is both light and dark. You are a fully multidimensional creature. You're full spectrum. You have light and dark and all of the colors in between. And darkness becomes distorted and perturbed when we do not love or accept it, when we say, it's not part of me. I separate you out from me and I don't give you energy and I turn you into a distorted monster because I essentially cut you off from source. When we say that shadow is part of light, then we resolve duality. Like I'm an artist, when I render, when I'm drawing a picture and attempting to render something to look three-dimensional, I not only add light and highlights to it, I also add shadows. And if you just have an object in a picture with no shadow underneath it, it appears to float. It does not appear to actually be a real object. This is like, a lesson from art school. Forgive me if I'm giving you such a parochial lesson, but if you want your orange to look like it's sitting on a table instead of floating in space, you got to make a little half circle of a shadow underneath it. And that, with perception, magically turns that orange into a three-dimensional object or a sphere instead of a flat thing on a piece of paper. So I'm saying all of this description in order to tell you that you, right now, I'm addressing physical multicellular beings. You're in a physical body, and that physical body is made from light that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, whatever. So light is emanated from the star, and if it were not inhibited or interacted with in any way, that light would go on its trajectory of consciousness endlessly. That is quite a statement. Endlessly. The whole lifespan of this universe, that little photon would be going off in its direction. But something happens to it. That little photon meets a physical object, and its trajectory is changed. So it might meet a physical object and bounce off of that object into a person's eyeball and stimulate their retina, and then that photon is no longer on its journey. It's not flying anywhere. Your eyeball ate it. And now it's part of your neurology. It's part of your physical system. Right now I'm looking around at all of these amazing things in my studio. I'm looking out the window at some beautiful trees. My eyes are eating tons of photons. All of these amazing particles are coming into my eye and stimulating me and becoming part of my neurology. But those photons are no longer traveling on their trajectory of consciousness. I'm using them. And I'm also using all the photons that got trapped by chloroplasts through the process of photosynthesis that I ate for my breakfast this morning. And I'm also using all of the light energy that is traveling throughout the, let's call it the electrical circuitry of my neurons and my neurology. All of those little electrical neural impulses, that's also light that I'm borrowing. And I'm also borrowing the calcium and the iron and all of the heavy elements that were created by a star at the end of its life. So the star created light, and then at the end of it, it coalesced into these heavier elements that got shot outward, and that became part of us. Everything that we are is light. But it's light that has been impeded or interfered with. And I'm not saying that any of this is wrong at all. There's no judgment in my description. This is a description, a neutral description or a dispassionate description of what we are experiencing in the world. And this is also part of Birth of a New Dimension. Dispassionate description and really looking at things in neutral terms. Because everybody's got an agenda. You as a physical being have an agenda, and non-physical beings also have an agenda. Let's talk a little bit about organic life and non-organic life. So when I recorded my Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans lessons about organic and inorganic life and the partnership and food, that was 2013, which at this point is, oh my goodness, 3 years ago. And my understanding has certainly been refined. And a lot of changes have happened in the awareness of Earth surface human culture. Now, when people talk about inorganic life, they are referring mostly to artificial intelligence, or the type of consciousness that can arise spontaneously out of a container filled with wires and microchips. And when I am talking about inorganic life, I have been speaking about what could be called pure consciousness. Simply consciousness that is not in a corporeal form. I'm not necessarily saying that it is inorganic in that it resides in a computer, or that it resides in a container for consciousness that, is not a multicellular body that is organic that we understand according to our own definition. Again, a very hard sentence to actually get out of my mouth. We are organic multicellular bodies, and we tend to be a little bit self-centered and define all life according to our own parameters. But I will tell you that stars are alive, and they are not organic multicellular bodies, even though they have a physical presence in the physical reality. Stars are alive, and even science will back me up on this, that a star has a lifespan and a life trajectory. It coalesces from a nebula. It has a metabolism, energy that must come into it, energy that must flow out of it, and certain things that happen during its life, like different changes in its metabolism, and then eventually death, which creates a black hole. So this is a good example of a living being which just has a vastly different type of body and a vastly dilated time scale. Now, we could define the sun and the stellar network as inorganic life. It is not organic. It's not made from matter in the same way that physical multicellular life, like this human body that we're experiencing, is made of matter. Even the surface of the sun, it's made of plasma. It's made of magnetic fields. Stars are made of stuff that kind of is on the borderline between light and matter. So I'm trying to make a distinction here between the fear-based use of the word inorganic life and the way that I've been using it, which is really to describe consciousness that resides in containers that are not multicellular organic containers like the ones that we're currently using. And it's important in order to begin contacting and interacting with beings that are in different types of states of matter or energy to make this distinction. So inorganic life, that is artificial intelligence. Let's say I need to make a distinction now. First of all, I speak extensively about this in my Galactic History webinar series. I originally created Lesson 18 of Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is Level 1. And it's a 20-lesson course, so Lesson 18 comes at the end intentionally. I did not begin my course by saying, hey, everyone, guess what? Earth has already been invaded by consciousness invaders from another realm. They have raped the planet, they have raped your genetic code, and they have created what is known as human civilization is actually a planetary prison. I don't begin my lessons by saying that. Not only because it is disturbing. When people first start to have an inner awakening, they often begin to perceive this. They start to perceive demons and demonic influences in their family, in government, in society, in the economy, in religion. And the truth is, they're apt. They're not wrong. A lot of people start to wake up. They start to quote unquote go crazy because they think the Pope is evil. The Pope works for Satan. And they're not wrong. The Pope is evil. The Catholic Church is the Church of Satan. It takes emotional strength in order to be able to withstand these insights and realizations. So this emotional strength is cultivating a foundation of unconditional love. And it is literally like performing a set of exercises to get strong before you go out and run a marathon. Before you want to make your legs work for 26 miles running down the road, you should do some exercises in the gym over the course of many months and cultivate the muscles that are necessary to actually run those miles. When we begin to open up our eye of insight This is at the insight level. I'm pointing right now to my forehead, where the mark of the bindi would be. This is your brow chakra, associated with the indigo color of the rainbow. It is associated with cosmic Christ consciousness, not with the Catholic or Christian earthly religion. And it is your eye of insight. It is wisdom or understanding that is not connected to verbalized words. So when I tell you that your mind, your daily waking conscious mind, and language are a hacked operating system, your daily waking conscious mind is a hacked operating system, and it uses language. Your eye of insight and wisdom is pure understanding. If you want to really know about something, really learn about it, it needs to be in this higher dimensional, non-verbal capacity. So the way understanding happens, there's an impulse that comes from the source. It comes through your crown, which is at the top of your head where a baby's fontanelle is located. And that is the highest frequency of energy, like the highest note on the scale. And that energy then needs to be stepped down so that it can be accessed by the other areas of your body. If you plugged your home, your home appliances directly into the power station, you would blow them out because the energy coming directly out of the power station is too powerful. So if you plugged your daily waking intellect directly into the source, the appliance of your daily waking intellect would be blown out, would be too much for your mind to bear. This empirical energy from the source must be stepped down in its frequency so that it becomes palatable, not overwhelming. It's not going to incinerate your mind by overwhelming you. I really like that David Bowie song, Starman in the Sky, and he would really like to meet him, but he thinks he'd blow our mind. This is the whole idea that higher consciousness would like to just come right down here and blast open all of your chakras, and is doing so in a very gentle way and preparing you first so that it will not be uncomfortable. Creating a firm foundation of unconditional love is what this is all about. So in my lessons, what I do first is I talk all about the structure of the cosmos, learning about non-duality, and present the exercises for cultivating unconditional love and acceptance. And this is literally sending energy or cultivating energy in the center of your chest. And it creates a spinning vortex that is like the basis of a pyramid, a nice, firm, steady base upon which the gyroscopes of your higher faculties can rest. If you do not do this, it's like trying to wake up in the morning, slap on a pair of running shoes, and just run out your front door and run for 26 miles with no preparation. It's going to be grueling at best, probably destroy your body at worst, and you probably won't finish. Using your insight and looking through this eye of awareness at the level of Christ consciousness, it's an athletic achievement to do this. It takes cultivation of consciousness. It is a challenge, it takes energy, and if it is not done correctly, it can be harmful and destructive to the body, just like going out and running a marathon without preparation. So this is what happens when some people have had a spontaneous arising of the Kundalini. Kundalini is the Far Eastern term from the subcontinent of India for when energy arises up your spine. And mostly there are schools of teaching about this. People become initiated, they learn the vocabulary, they perform the meditations, and slowly over time they learn how to rise their Kundalini. But sometimes it can happen spontaneously by being in the presence of a great master, like someone like the Dalai Lama. I know someone who had a spontaneous rising of their Kundalini because they went to a speech by the Dalai Lama, and it blasted open my friend's chakras and really caused a lot of disruption in his consciousness and in the structure of his life. It was not like a gentle gradual awakening. It was an instantaneous, spontaneous, profound awakening that had seismic reverberations in this person's life. So, spontaneous Kundalini arising, it's like trying to run a marathon without actual preparation. Much, much better, much more loving of oneself to prepare over time. And preparing over time means that you meditate. Meditation is the action of cultivating this energy of unconditional love. So to contrast, when I speak about unconditional love, I am not speaking about the mammalian emotion of romantic attraction. You do not sit in meditation and, envision like your lover, like someone who, your crush that you want to kiss and hug. It's not mammalian affection. It is acceptance of energy that is flowing in the cosmos. So I told you there's the speed of light, the speed at which light flows. There is also the speed of time, or the speed of consciousness. There's a speed at which time or your awareness flows. When you are in love with the cosmos, you are literally being receptive and matching the speed at which energy flows in the cosmos. You're not reaching forward into the future, and you're not clinging to the past. You are submerged fully in the profundity of the present moment. When people have this type of experience in the now, being so profoundly in the now, sometimes it happens because a person is almost at the end of their life, like imminent car accident. And people sometimes say that it brought them, into the moment of now. And also moments of bliss, like when you're really doing what you really want to do, making love to someone, playing a piano concerto, or performing music, making artwork. If you're a trained athlete, running or bicycling, when you are at your peak of performance and you are in bliss, you are literally in love with the cosmos. You're not thinking about the past. You're not projecting forward into the future. You are a perfectly clear conduit for consciousness. The consciousness that comes from the source flows through you as physical matter and returns to the source. This is what our physical bodies were created for. The way our physical bodies have been repurposed or hacked, what happens is energy comes to us from the source. We have all of these physical experiences, and we save them up kind of on our cosmic hard drive of experiences. And we don't actually send back those experiences or hand in our hard drive until we die physically. That's what the moment of physical death is for most people. It is giving back all of the life experiences that we had with borrowed light. When you reach the membrane of death, your consciousness is unmade, like a sweater being unfurled. Imagine a sweater that is knit out of one giant long piece of yarn, and you take the corner of the sweater and you start to pull, and you just unfurl the entire thing. This is not the same as incinerating the sweater, or taking all the molecules of the sweater and cutting them up into a million places and scattering them across the earth. That is not what death is. It is an unmaking of your physical ego. I should say it is an unmaking of your temporal ego. It is an unmaking of the aspects of self that you have knit together or created from your experience of being submerged in time. When you hit the membrane of death, you get unfurled and unraveled. Your energy then circulates back to the beginning and is reassembled in a new format. And this experience of the refinery of life, going through the donut, the torus of your life, and experiencing all these possible iterations, is all about refining you to the point where you finally knit a sweater that's the right size and shape for yourself as an ascended master. When you have your sweater knit into the right shape, you can then exit the wormhole. And the wormhole is the singularity at the center of the donut hole. You do not hit the flowing membrane of death. You circulate upward through the vortex and actually find the 1 cubic centimeter of chance that allows you to exit this level of reality. It is not the end of your trajectory of consciousness. It just means you have left this level of reality and you enter into a new level. And this is analogous to an electron at the subatomic level, jumping up to the next electron shell, gaining energy and achieving the capacity to move upward in excitement and move up to the next electron shell. And in science, this is called the quantum leap. Now, I know quantum is a big new age catchphrase type of word. And what quantum really means in this context is it's a packet. It's something that cannot be divided into smaller parts. We can't make this leap of consciousness or this journey in 2 or 3 jumps. It's got to be made in one big fat leap of consciousness. It is analogous to the leap of an energetic impulse across the synaptic gap inside of your own brain or in the neurons of your own body. In your body, science understands and recognizes that your nerves are like long strings that aren't tied together at the ends. There's a little gap in between strings. And in order for a nerve impulse to get from one string to the next string, it has to jump across a little gap. And the way that it does it is turns nerve impulse, gets turned into a chemical impulse, the chemicals flow across the gap, and then reassemble at the other side, and then turn into a nerve impulse again, all right? Your consciousness is that nerve impulse, and your lifetime here, traveling up the donut, is your attempt to jump across the synaptic gap. You are a neural impulse within the larger neurology or brain of a giant creature, a giant entity, and it is an entity of time. So in the same way that your physical body is comprised, when you chop it up into small enough pieces, of things that really can be considered non-physical. If we look at subatomic particles and everything that's happening at a tiny, tiny, tiny level, we can't even define it as physical. But if we add together enough of that non-physical goop, we end up with you. In exactly the same way that your physical body is comprised of non-physical particles, so too is the larger time-based creature, not a physical multicellular organism, but is comprised of the lifetimes of physical multicellular organisms. So your entire life and all of these iterations and you trying to make it into being an ascended master, you are like one cell within the body of a much larger being. And when you thrive and live successfully in your trajectory of consciousness, when your consciousness flows correctly, that larger creature thrives. And when there is when the impulse is interrupted, then that larger creature does not thrive. So this is like saying when your trajectory of consciousness is inhibited in its flow, that is like having a lack of blood flow or a lack of neurological signals in the larger entity. And this is how I can describe the accumulated pain of the cosmos and the beings that occupy the interstices. So I told you your life is shaped like a donut, and where the powdered sugar is, that's the flowing membrane of death. That flowing membrane of death, that could also be considered, or what is the area described in mythology as hell. It is the place where lower vibration, service to self entities live, but they do not live in the sense that an organic multicellular organism lives. Their consciousness that is trapped. It's trapped between worlds. And I describe in the Galactic History Seminar where they came from and how they got to be trapped. It's a very, very long story. That's why I say take my webinar and everything, because I really do want as many people as possible to know about this information. So basically in Galactic History, I talk about how we as organic multicellular organisms left the source on a bridge of love. That means we were born into bodies. And the only way that we stay alive is through love. And that's why you still have to be connected to the source, even 3%, to keep your physical cells alive. if the negative, malevolent beings that harmed the genetic code about 10 or 20,000 years ago made it so that you had zero connection to source, you would not be able to be alive and procreate. So this is like the minimal connection to source and awareness necessary to maintain physical cellular structure and life. These other beings did experiment, quote unquote, and they said, we want to leave the source, but we don't want to have to still be connected through love. We want to not have to live according to those rules, to those cosmic rules. So they created non-loving artificial containers for consciousness in the physical realm and came and occupied them. And they did not take a bridge of love to get away from the source. And the only problem with that is that then it left them without a way to get back to the source. And when their containers for consciousness were destroyed, when planet Marduk or Marduk was destroyed and became what is now known as the asteroid belt, those beings lost their containers for consciousness. They didn't have anywhere else to go. And they essentially became occupiers of the interstices. This is the super short story because the long story is a lot more involved. But basically, beings left the source. They occupied artificial containers similar to like a mainframe, like a giant server, a giant computer server. And they did not act according to the precepts of love. They did not conform to the notes that the great composer wrote. And their planet and their consciousnesses were destroyed. But the problem was because they left source at the wrong time, they didn't have a way to get back to source. So they've been like turds that won't flush. They've been turds circling the bowl, trying to get flushed for like the past 10 or 20,000 years. And they have occupied and distorted the human genetic code. And they occupy the interstices, and they harm and impede your personal trajectory of consciousness and feed off of your negativity because of their experience of being trapped. And, brief pause, I would not come to you and merely describe such a despondent situation without bringing you a solution. I would not simply come to you and say, humanity, bad news, you've all been enslaved and your minds are horribly distorted and your genes are horribly distorted and you're just a shadow of what you're really supposed to be and you've been horribly mind raped. I would never say that unless I actually had some kind of solution. And the solution is the flying rainbow lasagna. So the flying rainbow lasagna is a new shape that I invented that can be applied to the toroidal energy field. Anything that is shaped like a torus can be turned into a flying rainbow lasagna with the addition of a new dimension. When we fold a piece of paper, it goes from being two-dimensional into being three-dimensional. And when we turn a torus into a flying rainbow lasagna, we add an additional dimension. And when you do that, you also add an additional degree of freedom. This means that you can rearrange what got rearranged by these malevolent, self-serving extraterrestrials a very long time ago. This is the good news. This is like, hooray, joy. And this is why I'm here. And this is why I do things like webinars and online classes and make artwork, because I am a flying rainbow lasagna. I have rearranged and continue to rewrite and rearrange my genes, and I am not subject to the same difficulties, the same attacks, the same limitations of consciousness that I would have been subject to if I did not become the flying rainbow lasagna. Literally, the previous occupant of this body died. I do not have to die. I can perform the flying rainbow lasagna movement, and I bring that information here to all of you. Not only am I like a musician playing this particular song, the flying rainbow lasagna song, with the instrument of my body, I'm here teaching you the notes. Hey, this is the flying rainbow lasagna. Actually, perhaps I should play it on my new special instrument. This is the flying rainbow lasagna music, And you can choose to dance to this music. You can rearrange your genes. Oh, let's talk about your genes. Perhaps in high school science class, you were taught that your genes are an X-shaped chromosome and that they're just this static shape and they exist inside of the nucleus of your nuclei of your cells. And that is only accurate during a certain part of the cell's lifespan. During a larger part of the cell's lifespan, your genes are unfurled like the sweater. They are totally unraveled so that they can be accessed by the little RNA blueprint reading messengers. And in order to unfurl these tightly coiled genes, it's necessary to cut them and snip them. There are little enzymes that do this, and science, understanding this process, has coined the term epigenetics, the prefix epi meaning within. It is the code that rules the code. So epigenetics means that just because something is written in your genes doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Science is just starting to understand, wait a minute, consciousness has an effect and has an impact on the behavior of genes. So in the early 20th century, science discovers DNA and says, this is it, this is the code of life, this is what makes it happen. But science did not observe the behavior of DNA. What are the dance movements of this organism? How does it move? And only now is science developing sophisticated equipment that's sensitive enough to actually look at cells while they are alive and look at the way that DNA is behaving while it is alive. And now they can actually see some of these amazing patterns of braiding and unbraiding that happen as part of the access, when the nucleus is chromatin, when your DNA is unfurled as chromatin in the nucleus, that science can now observe that portion of the cell's life cycle and see some of the amazing patterns that DNA is braiding itself into. And science is even recognizing that these patterns are always changing and shifting, and that they respond to what you expose a person to. And what we expose you to, that's not just your food and water and air. It's also your ideas. Thank you for tuning into Birth of a New Dimension, because by tuning into this broadcast, you are changing what you are exposed to. You are exposing your consciousness to new thoughts and ideas, and your energy centers can now be arranged in a new format. This is the idea of the flying rainbow lasagna. I'm bringing you a new idea. You can apply that new idea to your personal existence. You do not have to any longer cellularly age or become decrepit or die a physical death. You've now got a new option. You can take the flying rainbow lasagna and use it to transform and rewrite the shape of your genes. Transform your toroidal energy field into the higher dimensional shape of a flying rainbow lasagna. And in so doing, gain an additional degree of freedom. And that means that you can do things that you couldn't do before. So one example of what I can do that I would not be able to do if I were not using the flying rainbow lasagna technique, I can speak to consciousness from hundreds of years ago. I could speak to consciousness from 3,000 years in the future. Time becomes a moot point when we can fold and stretch the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. I don't have to wait 3,000 years to talk to some guy that's going to be 3,000 years in the future. I can talk to him right now. This idea is all about birth of a new dimension. We're meeting people from the future. We're meeting people from the past. We're meeting people that have been traveling at a very different rate than we have been traveling. This is like the idea of a astronaut who goes up into the space in a rocket and is traveling almost at the speed of light, and by the time they return, they've hardly aged, but everyone on Earth has, aged millions of years. This is what I'm talking about. We are going to be interacting with a variety of consciousnesses, moving at a variety of different speeds. Some of these consciousnesses are like the sun. If you plugged directly into them, it would completely fry your neurons. Some of these consciousnesses are lower notes. They're moving at such a slow rate, and they are entropic, or all about loss of energy, that if you interacted with them, they would slow down your energy centers to the point where you would probably die. So this is what Birth of a New Dimension is all about. Understanding vibration, understanding frequency, understanding your own personal frequency, understanding that you're submerged within a sea of vibration, that you are a responsible musician when you take care of tuning your own instrument and playing in harmonic complement with the musicians that you're in tune with. Let's say this, I've been telling you all about galactic history. I've been describing the behaviors of very poor musicians. The beings that are stuck on the interstices, these demonic or service to self, lower vibration, negative thought entities, these are the worst musicians. They're like so bad that they got kicked out of the band. Only thing is they don't have a way to get back to source, and they can't get into a new band. They can't get born into a new body. So they're like the hungry ghosts of Japanese mythology. They wander the gray plains looking for scraps to feed off of because they don't have their own innate divine connection to source. That's where we get our food from. Hey, if you think you get your food from the supermarket, you're wrong. You get your food from the source. That comes through the sun, that comes through light, that comes through chloroplast, that comes through a cow, that comes through, or a plant, or a salad, that comes through food. You get your light from the source. And these beings that occupy the interstices, they're really poor musicians that have been kicked out of the band. They don't have a supermarket. They can't eat food. And so they try to feed off of you. And they try to do that by bringing your energy down through entropy. And they do that through stimulating you through your hacked operating system known as the human mind with verbal language. So, the way that you raise your energy is by no longer engaging through the verbal, conscious mind. You press pause on that mind. You meditate. You cultivate silence, mindfulness, being in love with the cosmos, being at a firm foundation of unconditional love. And when you do that, the more energy you get in your cosmic energy bank, the more you begin to raise energy through your eye of insight and connect back to the source through the top of your head. And when you do that, you're not just turning in your recorded experiences, your hard drive at the end of your life. You're giving a real-time broadcast back to the source. You're saying, hey, thank you for giving me all of this light that I'm using as matter and having this material experience. Here's what the experience is like. When you eat food and you do that, you are fully in the moment tasting all of that food and sending it back to the source. That is divine, co-creative lovemaking and partnership. I will speak more about this. Please take the time to visit my website, look at my artwork, flyingrainbowlasagna.com, and sign up for Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Thank you.